Welcome, everyone. My name is Steve Stein, and I'm the host of the Time to Chill Meditation Challenge. And this session, we're pleased and privileged to do. We do some live sessions throughout Challenge Week, and we are live on YouTube, which is kind of a new phenomenon for us. And we're live and we're good and we're recording. So couple of footnotes. Welcome, everyone. This is day 2 of the Time to Chill Meditation Challenge. We have a wonderful live event today with Mark Coleman. And Mark Coleman most recently is the author of a field guide to nature, and it's an audio book. It looks like it's an app, but it's really looks like a wonderful tool that can be used to do mindfulness meditation in nature. And then Mark, I want to hear some inside stories. He just had an incredible trip to Africa. I want to hear some of that. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Steve. Good to be with you, and welcome everybody. Glad to be with you.
Excellent. So let's see. How's that looking? So, all right. So today we have, let me turn that off. So today we're going to get into some of the latest research about mindfulness, some of the mindfulness in nature. And just a personal anecdote. So I'm here in New Jersey, and we have an old house, but we have a nice little piece of property for our neighborhood. It's a nice little piece of property. So what did I do before this session? You know, it's kind of like a ritual. I'll walk around the perimeter. It's not a long walk, but I walk, and we have like 30 trees on our property. So I'll walk by all the trees and see where the groundhogs live, where the deer were, and and feel the rustling of. I don't do barefoot because this is New Jersey. It's a little funky, but it's lovely though. So, and I come out of that little once around, and I'm just healed. I'm just not that there was anything wrong with me, but it's something that relaxes me, just being in nature, even literally for less than 2 minutes. And there's science behind that.
Oh, lots of science. Yeah, there's dating back, I'd say the first science around walking was happening in Japan, what's translated as forest bathing, also replicated in South Korea. And they would track people taking I think it was a 20-minute, but it may have been 20 minutes to up to an hour walk in a park. And they would do these interesting pre-post studies. So they'd take a little, I think it was a blood sample, maybe saliva sample. And what they showed just from walking in nature without any specific guidance except be present in nature, blood pressure levels came down, cortisol levels came down, people's well-being went up, people's state of reported happiness went up. And then there's lots of studies done about replicating, sort of contrasting, like what is it like to walk in a city versus walk in the park? And what happens, not surprisingly, is when we walk outside in the park or in nature, then again, same thing, we feel calmer, we feel more restored, we feel greater sense of well-being, heart rate goes down, all the levels, the inflammation markers, all those things go down, because being outside in nature is both, for our biology and evolutionary biology, being in nature is a familiar and restorative environment. So so that just walking around your garden or the neighborhood or park is actually has profound well-being effects, and it's free and it's available for most of us. Not all of us live over the garden or a park, but usually somewhere we can get some access to nature, and it's beneficial. So highly recommended.
Wow. So we were talking previously, and you were telling me that since COVID, there has been renewed interest in your work. I think you've been doing, is it right to call it mindfulness or meditation and nature? That's been your niche for a while now. But since COVID, it's the interest has expanded.
Yeah, dramatically. I think what happened in the pandemic is that so much of our typical activities were cut off, going out and going into the city, going into whatever it was, cinemas, cafes, bars, whatever. And people realized one of the most available resources was nature. And it's on our doorstep, and it's free, and it's beautiful, and it's restorative. And I think what happened is people realized, wow, there's this amazing, beautiful resource. And resource sounds a bit extractive, but it is a resource in that it resources us. And so, yeah, I live near a lot of parks where I live, and I saw a massive increase in park and a massive increase in the diversity of who is using the park system. And also a huge interest in my work, because my work is taking people out into nature with mindfulness, with a contemplative presence, and really kind of exponentially increasing the benefit of being outside, because we're learning to be present and awake and aware and sensitive and embodied. So.
Wow. Yeah. So it's because it's interesting. Like, one of the things that I thought was weird, but I totally got it, that during the peak of COVID, people were walking around outside wearing a mask. And and part of it, absolutely, I always wore a mask if I was near someone. But in nature, I found not having the mask was just something about a direct experience of being there. Like, if you, so what, maybe there's research in this. We had this incredible podcast about 6-8 weeks ago with John Kabat-Zinn and Sherry Turkle from MIT. And she was talking about how she has granddaughters. So she was talking a lot about her granddaughters. And one of the things is that when you have like Amazon TV and there's nothing on it for a while, there's beautiful nature scenes, and it's transfixing. But there must be different, and actually it must be different being in nature, feeling like, I used to think it was like a new age thing, but they talk about like the negative ions if you're by the coast at the ocean, or even in a shower. There's stuff that is like actual scientific difference between just being in nature and watching it on a screen.
Yeah, well, we are sensory animals, mammals, and the visual sense is just one of the senses, and there is good data from showing nature images in hospitals, particularly when people can see photos of nature, videos of nature, or even better, a view out a window of nature. People heal quicker, inflammation goes down. They spend less time in hospital because there's a support for well-being. But that's only one sense, right? When you go outside and you walk in the forest, you're inhaling the tocopherols, which are chemicals released by trees, particularly pines and whatnot. And those chemicals and others, they and I'm going to get my terminology, maybe pronunciation not so accurate, but they increase phytokines, which are basically, they increase white blood cell, anti infection activity, and our brain gets stimulated, different hormones get stimulated. And so it's often why we go for a walk and we have insightful thoughts, because we think more clearly when we're outside. And actually, they even did a study where they extracted those chemicals, which I think are called tocopherols, from pines, and they put it in a hotel room where people were staying for days. And again, the same thing happened. They felt more clarity, they felt more creativity, they felt more innovation. And again, I don't want to look at being in nature as extractive in that way, but we can look at it as it's naturally creating a positive milieu for our nervous systems, for our brain, for our body. And so, as you say, when you go outside and you walk by the ocean, when we go outside, the oxygen levels go up and the negative ions go up and other kind of chemicals go up. And so we're just putting ourselves in an environment that we've evolved in for millions of years. And it's only in the last couple of 100 years that we've increasingly put ourselves indoors, cut ourselves off from stimuli, from those natural, healthy inputs. And so my work is taking people outside, teaching meditation outside. And my main instruction at the end of anything that I teach is 2 words: go outside, go outside, go outside. Because, whether that's walking outside, whether that's taking your phone or your laptop or whatever it is you're working on outside, or taking your family outside into the garden, it has tremendous benefits. Aside from what I just cited, but also, for example, we live in buildings, and our buildings might be beautiful and they're functional, necessary, but we live with 8-foot ceilings, and you go outside and suddenly the ceiling is miles high, and we see even in the city, we see space, we see vista, so we feel a sense of spaciousness or vastness. And often we don't feel that. We feel confined, we feel contained, we feel hemmed in. And so even just going outside, as I do walk around my neighborhood, like, I feel space, I see light, I see beauty, I see movement. And it's very uplifting to the soul. And it's also very connecting. And one of the things that's come out of the pandemic is we feel socially isolated, disconnected, and tremendous negative impact on the health. And again, going outside, we suddenly connect with a broader ecosystem. We realize, oh, it's summertime. Oh, the geese are flying overhead. Oh, the kids are still playing because they're not back at school. And it just invites us into a much bigger world outside of our own self-absorbed world.
Yeah, and I think it's all magnified because everyone is, the word that comes up is attacked by our smartphone. There's such, what do they call it? How you spend time, time well spent. And something about being in nature is almost at odds with all the neuroscientists that work for the big computer companies that are trying to make you addicted to the smartphone. And so on one hand, you have nature, which feels good. And I think that one of the things of all this mindfulness practice over the years, like, it was always intuitively, sure, you take a good shower, you feel better. You go to the ocean, you feel better. You meditate, you're more relaxed. But now I think that there's science backing it all up. I think it's, and coupled with all the stress in the world, which partly comes from the competition from your time, from your technology. So it's almost like, I don't know, I don't want to say yin and yang, but they're 2 opposing forces. And we had Bob Roth on yesterday, and he's a new person we're working with. He's just totally interesting. But his meditation was on discernment. And he talked about discernment. And I think that has, and we talked about how, choosing, making a choice for, are you on the phone or What's your mantra? Go outside, go outside, go outside. And I think that's a conscious, a consistent thing. And so one of the things we like to do in for people who don't know, a lot of people, we've got 40 people on the YouTube channel now watching, which is great. So welcome everyone. This is an event from the Time to Chill Meditation Challenge. This is one of our featured live events. Better listen. People don't know, I've been publishing audiobooks for forever. And that's my core business of wellness, mindfulness. And then we started Wisdom Feed Plus, Wisdom Feed, which initially was kind of a blog for our authors on Better Listen. And it's kind of turning into ideally like a lifestyle brand. And then we've started Wisdom Feed Plus, which is our membership. And the whole idea is taking ancient ideas down to street level. But in your case, Mark, what it's not street level, it would be forest level. So I see, so we try to do practical things here. So in your most recent book, A Field Guide to Nature Meditation, you have 52 practices for joy, wisdom, and wonder. Do you have a couple of practices next time I go for my walk, or when I walk in the morning with my wife? Do you have some practices you could, anyone could do? Yeah,
anything? For sure. So in the 52, the Field Guide to Nature Meditation, there's a lot of what I call meandering practices. It's a word that sometimes called aimless wandering. In England, we call it bimbling or rambling. And what it is it's a moving meditation. It's a walking meditation, but it's walking. So when we're outside and we're doing mindful practice, it's one of the key features of that orientation is we're attuning to our senses. We're attuning to the sensory world around us. We're attuning to how our body is responding, feeling, sensing the world around us. And so there's many kinds of meandering practices. For example, meandering with curiosity. So when you're out walking alone with your spouse, with your dog, or you're in your garden, or you're in a park, or you're in a woodland, or wherever you happen to walk, the idea of meandering, which is often what we do naturally, if say we're hanging out at the beach, or in the country somewhere, out in the wilderness, is to just let your body be called and listen to the allure of what's around you. So rather than going, oh, I'm going to look at this tree, I'm going to check out the creek, I'm going to walk to that vista, I'm going to sit on that bench, you just let the body in a way guide the movement. And so, for example, one of the things you may do is, you might just meandering towards some trees. You might gaze at the trees, touch the trees, smell the trees, like ponderosas, where I teach in New Mexico, beautiful vanilla smell. You may, it's sort of tuning to different senses. So you might be using the eyes to gaze up at the sky, or look down at in the grasses and the flowers on the ground. You might be attuning to smell, and maybe the smell is what's alluring you, the scent of freshly mown grass, or the scent of the sea salty air coming from the bay. And so the idea is you just attune to your different senses as you're walking, coming out of your head, coming out of the story, coming out of the usual rumination that we're obsessed with, and be very much in your body, feeling your feet on the floor. Of course, doing this barefoot is ideal. Walking on the grass, walking on the ground, on sand. You don't have to walk barefoot, but anyway, you increase your sensitivity through touch, through smell, through seeing, through hearing. And so this is a beautiful way to both get present, but also to connect with the sensory world around you. And it's something we do anyway, but we're preferencing the body and the senses rather than preferencing our mind, which is what we do most of the time.
So say that again, because it's almost like a dichotomy. But you're not saying mindlessly walk around. But because you're saying don't fix on your just meandering. It's also a curious word. What does that mean? Meandering. It's like,
well, meander is, I mean, usually when we're walking, we have a destination, we have a goal. We're going to the store, we're going to our car, we're going to work, we're going to wherever. And that's fine, and that's useful and necessary. Meandering is less goal-oriented, less directed, and more just responding to what's happening in the moment and what's calling you. So, for example, if I walk out of my house here, I live in a neighborhood, but I might first be called to check out the beautiful oak tree behind me. And maybe sometimes I'll touch its bark. It's this cool gray, white oak skin. And I might look up and I might gaze at the canopy. And then I'll drift down the street and there's a beautiful old redwood. And sometimes, again, I'll touch the bark, or I'll look at the new shoots, or I'll smell the bark. And then I'll wander down further and there's some tall grasses and I might run my hands through the grasses, and then be curious about the smell of something. And so it's just letting yourself be pulled and allured, and you meander, you walk to whatever's calling you. You might walk in, if you're cold, you might walk in the sun, stand and gaze at the sun, or just feel the warmth on your skin. If you're hot, you might, walk into the shade. Maybe there's a beautiful lawn and you want to lie down in the grass. You lie down in the grass and you gaze at the canopy. Or there's a beautiful, smooth stone, rock, or cliff, and you want to touch the coolness. And so it's a dance with the environment rather than a linear, goal-oriented, habit of walking.
interesting. So that's cool. Like when I walk with my wife a few times a week in the morning, we're basically in a big park going in a circle with other people walking.
Right.
So, and that's good, and it gets our heart rate up. And what's interesting though is one side is next to like a not a highway, but a two-way street, but that's a long straightaway. The other side is up in the hills, in trees, and there's topography and all that. Sometimes we just walk on that side back and forth for the shade, but also to be in the nature. But so that's different than meandering. So what does that do? So is it kind of like a walking meditation?
Yeah, it's a walking meditation that you're attuning to your body, you're tuning to your senses, you're tuning to the landscape around you, you're less orienting to people, and you're less orienting to the rumination thoughts in your head, and more asking the question, what am I present to now? What am I aware of now? What am I seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching now? And when we orient in that way, then we connect. And when we connect, we usually feel all kinds of things: beauty, awe, love, curiosity, delight, wonder. Opens up a whole expansive quality of heart. When we, as we know, when we walk, do anything that's familiar, we tend to go on autopilot. We tend to, because we know where we're going, we don't have to think about it. And then what happens? Then we orient to our heads, or we orient to people, which is fine if you're chatting with your friend or your partner, or whatever. But this is actually a way of deepening your connection and intimacy with the landscape around you, which could be your own garden or a familiar park, as you're describing, or it could be a novel place like a different grove or trees or woodland that you might check out. But in the orientation is being present, being in your body, connecting to your senses, connecting to the landscape around you. And as you do that, then, as I said, all kinds of beautiful qualities can arise, like curiosity. Like you see a butterfly alight on a flowering plant or shrub, and maybe you're taken with awe at how this delicate, lacy winged being can fly in a headstrong wind. or how its proboscis is perfectly designed to take pollen or from a complex plant, and symbiosis of that. So it opens up many doorways than just going on autopilot on a walk, with our headphones on, listening to a podcast, chatting with people, and all that's fine. I'm not judging any of that, but I'm pointing to there's another way to be outside that's much more sensory embodied and also joyful.
Incredible. So I know a part of what you do is train people to, if I get it right, do or teach mindfulness in an outdoor setting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my Awake in the Wild organization, we run year-long Awake in the Wild nature meditation teacher trainings. And so that's a year-long program, 4 retreats over a year, where I'm training people in this methodology, drawing on many of the practices on the Field Guide to Nature Meditation, but also my earlier book, Awake in the Wild, and giving people the skills and tools to teach people how to be present in nature, how to be mindful, how to be embodied, how to attune to the natural landscape, how to draw on nature's beauty, wisdom, gifts, abundance, teachings that are always freely offered, that we can draw on for our own well-being, happiness, joy, connection, heart opening.
Incredible. That and as I think you told me, there's more demand than ever, because in common terms that everyone's losing their mind, because the world is in such a sorry state. I mean, I don't want to make light of it, but there's a big demand for it. But then,
we're becoming an indoor species. We're living. The average American lives 95% of their time indoors. That means many people are living 100% of their time indoors. And we're just not designed to do that. We're designed, for example, the reason we see color is because we co-evolved in the wild with needing to discern the colors of berries and fruits and leaves that were edible and that which were poisonous. And that's how color originally developed. All of our senses arose in relationship to the natural world. A whole nervous system evolved with the natural world. So when we're indoors, what happens when we're indoors? They're designed to minimize the senses. We minimize cold and heat and wind and bugs and change. And it's all fine, necessary, but we start to deaden in our senses. We start to feel cut off from each other, from nature, from different species, from seasons. And so no wonder we feel isolated, we feel separate, we feel alone, we feel disconnected. And so even just walking like you do, I love that you walk every day, walking around your neighborhood, and maybe there's some trees in your neighborhood, maybe there's a little park nearby where there is for you. That immediately starts to rekindle our senses, to rekindle a sense of connection to nature, maybe to the birds that are migrating, maybe to the season, maybe to the smells, maybe to the pollinators. And so I think it's an essential foundation for our well-being that we are aware of our connection.
Mm-hmm. And you just can't get that if you're indoors all the time. So
you can get it intellectually. You can watch National Geographic and learn about different species and ecosystems, but we're not just a head-centered being. We're a heart-centered, body-centered organism, and so we need to also feel that. As gardeners know, as farmers know, as people who work on the land know.
Interesting. Yeah, it ties in with Mark. Bob had mentioned yesterday that the brain uses, I think he said 20% of all the oxygen that the body, it's like an oxygen hog, that's my term. And if you're indoors, there's less oxygen. So there's just so many reasons to go outside. And I just want to ask you, Mark. We're glad to have him here. We almost didn't make it. He's been traveling the world, and I've been, vicariously traveling with you. Talk about National Geographic. So where were you? Just in Africa? And what was that like?
Yeah, so I, like for many people, the going to Africa on safari is sort of, it's a once in a lifetime experience. And I was very keen to be closer to, these mythic, iconic wild animals, lions, cheetahs, leopards, gorillas, chimpanzees. So we did a safari on the Serengeti Plains in Tanzania, bordering Kenya, particularly to see the wildebeest migration, where there's basically a couple of million wildebeest and zebras and other animals migrating north from Tanzania into Kenya, crossing the Mara River, and just this very breathtaking spectacle of seeing this mass movement, just like we used to have here with the bison moving across the plain, seeing this vast swathe of life and the ecosystem around it, and the predators that revolve around it, and the crocodiles in the river, and the lions and the whatnot that they're orienting around to this amazing movement of wildlife. So I had the joy of being very close to watching the migration, to being close to prides of lions, to seeing leopards in trees, and cheetahs hunting, and just seeing, just like when I've been to Alaska and other wild places, seeing a very intact ecosystem. The park in Tanzania, one part of the Serengeti, 20,000 square kilometers. There's a vast wild savanna, huge herds of elephants and antelope and impalas, and and so it's just beautiful to be in a wild landscape and to see a healthy ecosystem, partly healthy because it's protected, because it's preserved, because people do a lot of work around conservation and keeping up poachers and whatnot, and just seeing these beautiful, as I say, mythic beings. Right, for me, a lion is very mythic, but to be close, like to be so close I could almost touch, a male lion, a male lion, watching it eat its prey is profound. It's we rarely get that. I mean, I go into the wilderness here and I can, connect with the wild landscapes here, but there's so much less wildlife here, and there's something so fecund and abundant about that in this case Tanzania and on the Serengeti Plains.
Incredible. Wow.
And then just to finish that off, the other part of that
great.
trip was going to Uganda, where we had the privilege of being close to, in the jungle, in the forest, to being close with chimpanzees, and then gorillas, family of gorillas. And again, to see, our closest ancestors, 98.2% we share with chimpanzees, I believe, or 98.6%. And to see that the very close family structures, the relationality, the similarity with how we relate as social beings. And it was one of the things that most struck me about being there was how animals in the wild, mammals like us, except we've lost so much of our wildness, they often, what I was seeing is they're either eating, or they're being social, or they're resting. A lot of rest, a lot of relaxation, a lot of sleeping, and then hunting, eating when necessary, and then a lot of social contact, a lot of relationality within, especially with the gorillas and chimpanzees. But I was really struck by seeing how, like, most of the times we were with the chimpanzees and the gorillas, they were sleeping and resting and just lounging in trees, lounging on the ground. And we in this insane, busy doing cultures that we live in, it was profound to see, oh, right, we haven't always been so busy. We can be industrious and we need to make food and whatnot, but we live in this insane, driven culture, and we're out of alignment. And so coming in contact with the wild reminds us of how out of alignment we can be. And so it's a good reminder to pause, slow down, reconnect with our ancestry.
Incredible, incredible. It's just so natural, so intuitive, but we are, we are in a society that pushes us to produce, to create, to
the max,
survive. And so that must have been great seeing those critters, animals in their natural habitat like that. So we have some people saying hello from Oregon, from New York. One person asked if they what's a good thing for children to do if you want a child who's very active, what can we do with them in nature, or take them outside? Is there something just to get them to settle down a bit?
Yeah, well, I think nature's the ultimate playground for, I think, kids of any age, and particularly younger kids. And I don't know about settling down, but just like watching animals in the wild, when you have a lot of space to roam and to play in, whether it's a park, a forest, a beach, giving permission for the kids to play and explore and fall down and tumble and get into the soil and the bark and the fungus and and just to play.
Messy.
Kids love to be messy. They're interested. They don't have the same social conditioning around that soil is dirty. They just think it's interesting. It's full of bugs and seeds and acorns. And so I would say, just, if you can find places that you kids can roam around, obviously safely, but let them explore, let them be curious, because children are naturally curious, and nature, because it's so infinitely diverse and wondrous, it engages our curiosity. And so, and you can play games with kids about trying to engage their curiosity, and to you can play, getting them mindful to say, well, let's lie down on the grass and let's see how many, let's see how many birds we can hear. Let's see how many crawling insects we can see in the grass here. And just sort of engage their natural sense of fascination.
Excellent. That's helpful. Again, all this stuff is intuitive, but when you kind of lay it out, it's helpful. So if anyone else has any other questions, if Donna, if you have a question, that would be great. And so here's one other question. So if you're in the city and you can't, go to the Serengeti, or you can't go to even Central Park, is just once around the block, does that even helpful?
I always say anything is helpful. Like I'll spend, I'm on my desk here and I've got, nice trees out the back, but I'll take my laptop and I'll move to my deck to just both get as we talked about earlier, just get the fresh air. We walk outside, we get fresh air. Oh, we feel a little more energy. And then of course it's lighter, it's brighter. And I've got a little bit of a space in front of my house, so there's vista, so I see space. And it brightens my mind state. And yes, I might be still caught in the myopicness of emails and whatever I'm writing about. But every few seconds or minutes, I'll look up and I'll see the sky or clouds or a bird moving, and that just creates a sense of perspective. So I notice at the end of the day, if I'm working outside all day on my laptop, or I'm working with students or clients, I'm not tired, because nature is, it's energizing. The oxygen, the various things that some know about and some don't know about. So any amount, taking your coffee or cup of tea, or people used to go out for cigarette breaks. It was one of the few times they go outside, and yeah, they're smoking, but they're also kind of connecting to nature. And it's connecting to nature, but it gets them outside, right? So I would say, normally we have a break, and what do? We whip out the phone and we reduce, we maintain this very unhealthy focal contact of 1 to 2 feet, which is we have not been evolutionarily designed to have a 2 feet attention focus. Our attention is usually very broad. We're outside, it's looking at folks, things close up, things far away. So any amount of going outside, I'd say, is healthy. Again, because we tend to be self-absorbed and ruminate about ourselves, which generally isn't for our well-being. As soon as we go outside, even like I'll pot around my garden, I'll water the plants, I'll deadhead the flowers and whatnot. And just that, it just takes me out of whatever thing I'm in, whatever drama, conversation, stress. And it's like, oh, right, here's a daisy bush that needs deadheading. Here's some flowers that need pruning. And it's like I absorb in a world of beauty and nature that's amazing. Like I have this plant on my desk, and again, some of you can't get outside. Maybe you're in New York and it's an hour to the nearest park, and so I bring plants in. I got this beautiful, and if you can see it, I'm not having on myself view on, but this is it's an orchid that I like to rescue orchids because people throw them away and then they forget that they get incredibly regenerative. This is one I regenerated, and it's been flowering for 6 months, and it's like wild.
6 months, really?
Yeah, it just keeps flowering, and it's beautiful and it's wild and it's on my desk. And so sometimes I'll just gaze at that. Maybe I have 2 minutes between a Zoom meeting, and I'll just look at the plant, or I'll look out the window. And again, it shifts my frame, shifts the perspective. I notice my nervous system relaxing, my breath slowing down, my belly softening. And so that's the amazing thing about being mindful in nature or tending to nature, is it's almost immediate. When you look out the window and you catch a sunset, right? Or you catch a beautiful billowing cumulus cloud, or you see, like sometimes I'll see a red-shouldered hawk on the sort of the power pole outside my house, and it's riveting, and it's spellbinding, and it's probably been doing that for millions of years, flying, maybe not quite here, but and it just takes us into a much broader realm, way more interesting than this ever could be. These can be fun and entertaining and informative at times, but not enlivening. They don't engender awe or delight or beauty or reverence or rapture or humility, right? Which is what nature does, and those qualities are so essential.
That's excellent. Wow. Okay, so I think those are some of the questions that came in, and I think hopefully we can close with a meditation practice. And how can people find you and find out more about your work?
Yeah, so my main website for myself is my name, markcoleman.org, M-A-R-K, Coleman.org. And that has my schedule, has a lot of resources, books, audio, free meditations and things. And I lead a lot of nature retreats around the year, so you can find them out there. But I also have a website called awakeinthewild.com. And that website has all my Awake in the Wild events, my teacher trainings, and information that I've led a sunrise nature morning meditation every morning for 3 years. And now my graduate students lead it. There's different offerings. There's sunset meditations, there's equinox meditations, and so awakeinthewild.com for any information about the nature meditation work.
Yeah, amazing. There's just so many things that kind of came out of COVID. Bodies of work and meditations, but we don't have time to get into that, but I could talk about that for a while as well. So, all right. So how about, let's see. Donna writes, last night I was so stressed that I went outside. She lives next to the woods, and I was blessed to be able to hear an eastern screech owl calling for about 10 minutes, helped me to relax so that I could unwind. I try to stay outside as much as possible. Weather has not been the best this summer, but an eastern screech owl.
Yeah. And again, thank you for posting that down. It's a good example, right? You went out for 10 minutes, you were stressed, you went outside, and what happens is, you, in this case, you hear this beautiful screech owl, which is very, very kind of arresting sound. And I'm sure in that moment you heard the stress, unless it can induce fear, but probably also induce curiosity, that it brought you out of yourself. It brought you out of the stress. It brought you into the more than human world. It brought you into owls and ecosystems, and probably for a moment or a little while, the problems of your life, whatever you're stressing about, relaxed and went down. It's not that the feeling didn't go away. But when the nervous system calms down, when we return to those stresses or those difficult things, we've got more resources, we've got more balance, we've got more clarity, we've got more steadiness, we've got more spaciousness. And so that's why, that's such a beautiful example, Donna, that just 10 minutes, right, probably shifted your whole relationship, at least for a while, to the stress, help the body unwind, help the mind relax. And that's really available to all of us. So
Interesting. And then another friend from Oregon, my brother lives in Eugene. She's saying that in Bend, Oregon, it's been smoky. So, but that there was a couple of days where it wasn't smoky, and she had one day of relief, and it felt so good to get to go outside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's bringing up I'm not sure if we want to get into this whole other realm of conversation, but given the climate crisis and the ecological crisis, that now when we go outside, it's mixed. Many, especially in Canada, especially in the North, Midwest, and East Coast, people have been affected by fires and smoke, and so our experience of nature can be beautiful and awe-inspiring, but it's also now inducing some fear, sadness, loss, grief. It's a beautiful word called solostalgia, coined by an Australian ecopsychologist, McKenna, I believe his name is, where when we go outside, we both experience the joy, but also we feel the sadness and loss of what's happening to nature. And so that's another dimension. And yet, as this person's pointing to, there's gaps between the fires, gaps between the smoke, and they can be very restorative. Even with bad weather, like as Donna's pointing to, we've also had a very rainy, wet, cold, cloudy, foggy year here in the Bay Area, which is, I love the rain. Some people don't. And we've had a low fire season because of the rain and the fog. And even then, I encourage people, no matter what the weather, as I was saying to somebody the other day, I've never regretted once when I decided to go outside and went outside. Whether it was cold or snowy or wet or icy, you put layers on, bundle up, and there's always something beautiful. Maybe it's the sparkle of, the light on snow. Maybe it's the freshness of the air. Maybe it's the kind of the cloudy of the blue on a cold winter's day. So maybe if it's 116 in Phoenix, maybe you want to go out at 5 a.m. or 10 at night, not at midday. You have to be careful and smart.
So the mantra abides: go outside, go outside, go outside.
Indeed.
All right. Oh, and Sarah says she's in Eugene. I want to reach out to you after this because my brother's been in Eugene for 30 some odd years. We love Eugene. And all right, Mark, do we have time for a little practice to finish us
Sure.
off? Awesome.
Yeah. I'm going to do what's in the book. It's called an arriving practice, and it's also a sensory awareness practice, which is sort of the foundation of any nature meditation work. And what the arriving practice is, that whenever you go out somewhere to any landscape, however familiar, it could be your garden, could be a park bench, could be as I say, in a woodland park, farmer's field, whatever, and you find somewhere to sit or be still for a little while. The arriving practice is a way you begin to attune to the particularities of that environment through your senses. So I'll guide you through that we'll just do that for 5 minutes or so. Okay, so wherever you are, find a comfortable seat, or if you're standing, stand, or lying, lie down, whatever's comfortable. And even though you're probably indoors, as I am, we can walk you through the principle, which is to attune to what's around you. So beginning by just allowing your body to relax and find some ease, closing your eyes. And then begin to notice what is present in the soundscape. Like, what are you listening? What are you hearing? Maybe silence. Particularly if you're by an open window or you're outside, you may hear the wind, rain, breeze, birds, people, mechanical sounds. You're just letting the attention open to the soundscape. Things that are pleasant, things that are unpleasant. Just receiving in the way the tree receives the breeze. Just hearing sounds, silence. And seeing if you can be present to the sounds without thinking about or visualizing the source of the sound, just being aware of hearing, aware of sound, aware of silence. And shifting attention to your body. Notice all the ways the body is in contact with the ground, through your feet, through your legs, through your sit bones. Sensing whatever building you're in, you're still connected to the earth through your feet, through your legs, through the ground. And sensing the stillness of the earth and what the quality is of this place you're sitting in feels like. Calm, still. Or is it busy? Is it quiet? And then just tuning to the physical sensations of where you are. And perhaps you notice your skin and the coolness of the air, or the warmth of the air. How does the ground feel beneath your feet, legs, sit bones? And then tuning to your breath. The breath is a way we connect to the air, the atmosphere around us, inside, outside. As you inhale, you have the quality of the air, smell, temperature, the dryness, the moisture, texture. The air is reflective of the environment, reflective of the trees around us. As we inhale, we're breathing in oxygen released from trees, grasses around you, connecting us with the plant world, forest kingdom. So tuning to the senses in this way, we have sound and hearing, we have sensations through the body. We can feel a sense of the quality, perhaps, of the energy of the place we're in. Around the temperature, the movement of air, breeze, the movement of breath. And as we breathe, sensing that we're part of the ecosystem, breathing in oxygen released from trees, breathing out carbon dioxide, absorbed by plants. And then lastly, opening the eyes, turning the eyes away from the screen and just gazing at what's around you, particularly if you're by a window or you're by anything that's natural, a plant, tree out the window, the sky, sunlight. And aware of this particular ecosystem that you're in the city, in the country. And not losing connection with the other senses. So as your eyes are open, still being aware of sensing the body, taking in breath, of hearing sound, aware of the time scent, smell, aware of the ambience, the quality of place. And then you can imagine if you were outside in the park, in the garden, in the woods, by a meadow, a stream, you'd be just drawing on this sensory awareness, very natural, very effortless. And each time your attention drifts into thought, or each time you notice you're thinking about these experiences, come back to, what am I feeling right now? What am I experiencing directly through my body, through touch, through smell, through sight, through sound? And then as you bring this to a close, just notice even in this 5 minutes, bring attention to your body and the senses and breath. Just notice how that can, in some simple way, shift your quality of attention, mood, mind state, physical state. And just coming back to this moment and back to this webinar. So of course, when you're outside, you could do that for 10 minutes, half an hour. You could do it in a minute. It's a lovely way to just let yourself relax into feeling, receiving the whole sensory landscape around you. Okay.
That was great. That was a nice bookend to a wonderful conversation, and I learned a lot. And also, it's a time to chill meditation challenge. So I'm glad at the end we took some time to relax and do that practice. So I think that's it. Thanks everyone for showing up on the Zoom and also on YouTube. And we will see you, Mark, we'll see you soon. And we'll see you back in the challenge. Also, there's another live tonight with Wendy Kwan. She'll be doing a live event. She's the featured meditation teacher today. So you can still go into the Challenge Hub and do today's meditation and make sure you report in. And it's so exciting to see people from around the world engaging. And Mark, we're so glad that we found the time to have you contribute. So thanks, everyone. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day and go outside.